What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4. We are going to be diving into a brand new campaign on the 1st of January 1936, Gathering the Storm. We are going to be playing none other than the nation of Japan, led by Hirohito himself. Now, Japan is a fascist country, therefore they do have a totalitarian regime, and because they are a totalitarian regime, they will never have elections. Now, like any other country, Japan does have a variety of attributes and bonuses, one of which is state Shintoism, basically giving some factory bomb vulnerability reductions, meaning all of our production isn't necessarily as hindered as much in the event of the American bombings. And of course, we do have some division recovery rate. Now, it only is 10%, but I guarantee you it is a very powerful bonus nonetheless. Now, without further ado, we are going to dive in on the 1st of January 1936 on regular difficulty, but we are going to be playing on Iron Man mode to try to go ahead and obviously gain some achievements. Now, I do want to point out that right now it is 12 o'clock, but I am going to load the save here. Basically, it is 1 hour later, the exact same date. You can see that it is still Iron Man, and we are not playing on any difference in difficulty and multiplayer. Now, the idea is to basically start off 1 hour later, but I went in and I, fidgeted with all of the units themselves. I created actual divisions. As you can see, we have our entire army, which is only about 24 divisions. We have some very, very weak units as well. Some garrison divisions that aren't necessarily trained. We also have some tanks, our armored divisions. We have one lonesome marine division who we do need to bulk up as quickly as we can. We also have some additional garrison troops that are actually doing a very good job defending the Pacific Ocean. Now, I do want to go ahead and start off by saying I haven't done anything at all other than changing up where exactly my ships are going to be constructed. They are all going to be put into the Hiroshima docks, also known as the Chugoku province. And I do want to go ahead and say the only thing that I've really actually changed was how all of my units are clumped together. Basically, as we started off, everybody was in one big group, and it was just an absolute mess. So other than that, the very first thing that we want to do is, you can see if we click our free civilian factories, you can see that 9 of our 23 factories are currently going to consumer goods, and 2 of which are being traded away. Now, because I like to build up my industry just a little bit before we actually dive into our campaign, I am only going to be building 2 civilian factories while playing as Japan. Now, the reason why is I like to build up my industry, therefore I can obviously, if you are new to Hearts of Iron 4, civilian factories allow you to produce more of everything else. They are the backbone of your economy. More civilian factories mean you can produce air bases faster, better infrastructure, or excuse me, faster infrastructure, faster anti-air, etc., etc. Now, I am going to begin queuing up some military bases because, unlike a lot of the other countries and playthroughs that we have obviously gone through before, Japan is going to find itself in a war in 1937. Now, I do want to point out that I want to try to play as accurately and historically as possible, so we are going to try to invade China in July of 1937. So that means we really only have a year and a half before we actually begin our invasion. Now, what I plan to do is I plan to send my entire army division, which is basically 24 units. That's the maximum amount we can have per commander, and you are going to need a level 5 general. Level 5 generals basically give you a heck of a lot of additional attack and some defense bonuses compared to level 1, which only give you 5% attack and 5% defense. Now, this general is a trickster, giving some additional reconnaissance, and of course it looks like we are an engineer as well, giving us the ability to cross rivers and being able to construct field fortifications, which, you know, it gives us better attack inside rivers. So I do want to go ahead and say the entire premise, we are going to send this general and basically invade northern China by foot. We are going to have to, unfortunately, cross through the Marco Polo Bridge, eventually. And I am planning on sending actually a naval invasion filled with Marines, though unfortunately we don't necessarily have 10 units of Marines, we only have 1, so I am going to have to build up my naval, my military production as soon as possible. Now, the goal with the Marines is I want to kind of create a pincer formation, so that way I open up 2 fronts, and essentially I can pretty much weaken this front line, and essentially try to move on all of my units into northern China. I do want to point out that China is currently, broken and in pieces. China is in the middle of a civil war, so therefore, you can see that they have a variety of provinces. They have Communist China, they have Neutral China. I think around here they even have other provinces like Tibet hasn't even formed yet. Oh, yes it has, I lied. Well, anyway, eventually when we do declare war on China, they are actually going to be putting aside their differences and uniting. So that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Other than that, we do have some research slots available. We are going to be going with pretty much the same research that we always do. I do want to point out that we have a -1% research time bonus. So all of our research is, a little bit faster. So the #1 goal is I do want to go into our engineering tab and essentially upgrade our electronic engineering to get further research time, going from -1% all the way to -3. This is only going to take 99 days, so it is very, very cheap. And obviously, getting this out of the way now will yield some very powerful results in the future. Moving into industry, we have 3 other free research slots. I want to get Construction 1 because all of our factories will produce 10% faster, so therefore we can definitely take advantage of better industry whenever we can. We are going to be improving basic machine tools, which allow all of our factories, or at least all of our military factories, to produce 10% more, so therefore all of our production is going to be better as well. So we have 1 in engineering, 2 in industry, and finally, now we are going to go into our doctrines. These are some of the most powerful bonuses that we can give our military, and basically because they are so powerful, they are flat bonuses that essentially give your units new tactics and new, your commanders will basically fight the enemy in a different way. So we are going to be unlocking Grand Battle Plan, which is 297 days. Absolutely insane. Now, if you're new to the Hearts of Iron 4 series, basically you have a variety of land doctrines, naval doctrines, and air doctrines. Now, I'm not going to go through naval and air just yet, but land doctrines, differ drastically with whatever playstyle you're trying to, play as. Now, we are playing as Japan, so therefore the game kind of wants us to, to be guided into a particular path as we begin, so therefore we were given Grand Battle Plan. Grand Battle Plan is essentially extensive planning. The idea of essentially having one big massive plan and preparing for wars is how we are going to overcome our enemies. We are going to be getting quite a few bonuses if we do plan correctly and do plan the entire length of time. If we look at mobile warfare doctrine, these are for countries that preferably like to, have a ton of extra tanks, have a ton of extra mechanized divisions, motorized divisions. So therefore, all of their tanks are going to get faster movement speed, more breakthrough, and all of their generals are going to get some very cool tactics like blitzkrieg, and eventually they can try to, with their movement speed, try to push through the enemy lines and cut off their supply. So that's kind of a fun but unique playstyle. Superior firepower focuses more on shells rather than men. Our manpower is precious, bullets are cheap. So therefore, they are going to be having a heck of a lot of artillery bonuses. Now, don't get me wrong, like every doctrine is good. Like, if I was to go mobile warfare doctrine, I would still be good because there are infantry bonuses within mobile warfare, but it gives you a certain flavor of a playstyle. So like I said, a lot of tanks, a lot of breakthrough. This is basically an offensive, it starts off defensive, but then it changes to offensive. And essentially, they, produce a heck of a lot of artillery, and then you get more and more bonuses, and then eventually you get things like air superiority and additional organization. So it's really going to be powerful. And finally, we have mass assault doctrines, which are essentially for countries that have a lot of production, but unfortunately, let me rephrase. They have a lot of manpower, and they do have a lot of production, but the idea is to basically have so many men and so many weapons that, you know, we don't necessarily need heavier equipment like artillery or tanks. Now, don't get me wrong, like, obviously you can get deep battle and go into, like, motorized divisions, but the idea is to overwhelm the enemy with good enough weapons and obviously a very large number of units. So obviously we want Grand Battle Plan because we believe in planning and preparation, especially naval invasions. Therefore, we get some very powerful bonuses as well. Other than that, we have some free military factories. Our number one priority is we are going to need a heck of a lot of infantry equipment. Now, unfortunately, we are actually lacking steel, so we might need to trade for that, and I have one extra military factory. So the idea is I believe I would like around 10 units of support equipment. I am going to need to max out towed artillery eventually, and I get that I don't have enough military factories to fill up this queue, but I am going to build up one more line of infantry equipment. Press shift, move it to the very top. Now this is a queue, so if we move it down, you can see that our next available resources or our factories will go into our support equipment, and I am going to need infantry equipment as well. When we go to war with China, it is going to be an absolute slugfest, and I want to do everything in my power to ensure a very quick and decisive victory. I have no idea how well that'll work out. Other than that, we have no national focus set. My number one priority, I'm probably going to go ahead, army primacy would be very powerful, getting some free military factories, but instead we are going to get spiritual mobilization. Our entire nation, not only our soldiers, need to be spiritually prepared for war. To this end, nationalists have been brought together in the National Spiritual Mobilization Movement to boost patriotism and support for the government. So essentially we are going to get a heck of a lot more recruitable population. We have about 1 million right now, but the entire goal is to obviously make our way towards this extra research slot, and all of these Imperial austerity would be very powerful as well. Basically improving our economy, because right now we really only have about 14 civilian factories, and like I said, they are the backbone of our economy. Building more will obviously create more and more, faster and faster military factories. But the idea is obviously we have consumer goods factories that are being, you know, used for things like toasters and not necessarily things like civilian factories. So we are going to have to go ahead and change our economy laws, our export laws, and our manpower laws very, very soon. So other than that, we don't have any divisions in basic training. I said I do want to build up my Marines, so let's get all 9 of you prepped and ready to go. I only want to create 1 and not an infinite amount of 9 divisions. So obviously these 9 will move into this 1 unit of Marine who can actually go down here. And the goal is, of course, to basically do a naval invasion, and you are going to need 10 units to do so. So now let's finally speed on up. We are going to go to rank 4 here. Actually, we'll go to rank 5 for now. Usually, I don't like to play on speed 5 because things go by very, very quickly, but early on in the game, there isn't necessarily that much going on. I did move my entire fleet. We have 147 ships. We have 3 carriers who actually don't have a full amount of planes. We have 9 battleships, 15 heavy cruisers, and 17 light cruisers. Other than the United Kingdom, we have a very, very powerful navy, and probably one of the most powerful navies in the world, even on top of the United States. Soviet Union has a trash navy. Excuse me. Italy has a pretty strong navy, but it's pretty much Italy, the United Kingdom, all of Japan, and the US that are the only real naval contenders here on the early game. So right now, all we're doing is we are constructing quite a bit of, unfortunately, I guess we're actually only constructing 1 civilian factory early on. My number 1 priority is probably to get a silent workhorse early on. This is basically a political advisor. A silent workhorse will give us 15% more political power, which means all of our future advisors are going to be cheaper because political power is how we change laws and conscription, and then economy laws, and then export focuses. So the idea is I want to get a silent workhorse, and then with all of that political power, focus on industry as much as I can. Spiritual mobilization is almost complete. It's because we are playing on speed 5. And the idea is we want to go to war with China, I believe in July of 1937. So I am going to be playing as accurately and historically as possible. It looks like they are currently in the middle of their civil war. And hopefully we can basically take advantage of this situation. Spiritual mobilization has been unlocked. We went from about 1 million manpower to 2.46. And we have the remilitarization of the Rhineland. Germany has stationed troops in the Rhineland territory close to the French border in clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles. The local population cheered the German soldiers on, while the diplomatic reactions from France and Britain have so far been muted. It is no more than the Germans walking into their own backyard, a political commentator in Britain observed. So essentially what happened is when we started the game, they had this territory called the Rhineland, which actually is still here, but it was a demilitarized zone. Now after the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I, all of the Allied powers wanted to essentially try to, break apart Germany and prevent them from ever starting another world war. Now, the idea was creating a demilitarized zone, so that way if there ever was a battle, France wouldn't they would have maybe a few extra hours or a few extra days to have notice to prepare. Now, if you also look at this province called Alsace, it is the Maginot Line. Now, if you've never heard of that, the French have very powerful forts, actually maxed out, level 10 forts all across this line here on the border of Germany. Now, I do want to point out that this isn't just hills, it's actually mountainous territories. It's going to be very, very powerful, very hard to push through. And especially, there is a river here as well. So, it is going to be very hard for Germany to push through. But don't get me wrong, they did now have access to some new militarized areas. Other than that, we completed our spiritual mobilization. We are going to get Imperial austerity. Every subject of the Emperor must sacrifice for the good of the Empire. Basically, why this is important is we have less of a reduction for consumer goods. So, like I said, we had about 9 factories that were being just given away because of our current penalty. Now, obviously, you can't have all of your factories, producing what the government wants. Your people would be upset. They need consumer goods like toasters and lamps and tables. Things that make society a society. So the goal is we are going to try to break away at this and try to obviously improve our economy as much as we can. Our next goal, though, is we need 150 political power, and I would like to get a silent workhorse. It looks like our very first civilian factory is almost done. And currently, like I said, we are trading, and it looks like we are only trading oil, and we're getting 16. Who are we getting oil from? Let's click the oil icon. From the United States. I don't like that. Let's get it from Mexico. And you are going to need convoys obviously, you need 8 convoys for that 16 oil. Electronic mechanical engineering has been unlocked. I suppose let's continue on to mechanical computing, giving us some further research time bonuses, 3% plus the 1% and 2%, a 6% bonus altogether. Now, unfortunately, this is very expensive, 245 days to unlock. But nevertheless, it is an investment, and it is certainly going to be very powerful. And, I think it's funny. Like, obviously, we just completed one of our civilian factories, but because of our economy law, it went to consumer goods, so it was pretty much worthless to build. But obviously, once we get this new civilian factory in Shigoku, we will finally have 15 out of 15 civilian factories, and essentially, we will have as many factories as we can producing one item. Now, the more civilian factories we produce, instead of having over like 16 out of 15, it'll actually float down to have 1 out of 15. So the queue will begin to form. Imperial austerity has been completed. Therefore, this number has gone from 10 to 7, and you can see that we've gained 2 new civilian factories, finally starting up some military factories, which we desperately, desperately need. And finally, let us begin the industrial effort. Japan is newly industrialized and is not yet as powerful as some Western nations. We must take steps to close the gap between our capabilities. Now, we're going to gain 3 civilian factories, which is actually pretty powerful. It would take us an entire year to build all 3 of those with our current production. So the goal is, like I said, to just build up our production as quickly as we can. At 150 political power, I am going to unlock our silent workhorse. And here we are. All future political power gain will be 15% more, which is very, very powerful. Like I said, essentially this is an investment. All new political advisors, industrial concerns, aircraft designers will all now be cheaper. Or not necessarily cheaper, but they will come faster because we will accumulate political power faster. Let us use this research slot, and now we find ourselves at a crossroads. We are still in the industry tab. And we find ourselves at a crossroads. We have a mutually exclusive research opportunity. We can have concentrated industry, which essentially upgrades all of our economic development and our production and our manufacturing to essentially going to be consolidated around major cities. Now, obviously, this is good because this means there's less travel time, and you are going to gain more factory output, and max factories in a state is going to be improved. So the goal of this is to put all of your factories in one area to get more output, or you could do dispersed industry, which basically, instead of putting all of your big factories in the big cities, they get put out into rural areas. Now, you get less factory output, but fortunately enough, you get more things like bombing vulnerability, minus 10%, which would be very powerful coupled with our current ideas. But I think I am going to go with concentrated industry because we do get more factory output. Only 5%, so it's not that much more. But I believe as the game progresses and as the game goes on, it should get better and better. So right now we have all 24 of our units. I suppose, you know, we've got about a year to go. Let's just move everybody towards China and then create an offensive line to finally begin planning and preparing for our invasion. Now, like I said, the idea is once you get here, you can see that we have a max preparation. This is going to go from 50% to 80% because of our doctrines. So obviously, as we continue to work on these doctrines, it should be done in 100 days. They are only going to get stronger and stronger. Construction level 1 has been unlocked. My next priority is to build Mountaineers. Unfortunately, 194 days is a very long time, but it needs to happen. I want to convert all 16 of these units. Remember, these were my garrison units that weren't actually guarding the Pacific. This is my purple group that's guarding the Pacific. I want to convert this entire yellow group over to Mountaineers, and I want to add 24 more Mountaineers and 8 divisions here. So therefore, I'm going to have 24 divisions of yellow, and then eventually probably 24 more divisions of yellow Mountaineers as well. So therefore, we're going to have 48 yellow Mountaineers. And the idea is to invade China quickly and effectively. Now that we have industrial effort, I would absolutely love to get this new research slot, and unfortunately, we are going to have to do the student movement first, which does, you know, we can't just jump straight to the research slot. The Ministry of Education is as important a part of the spiritual mobilization as any other, and having educators and students rally behind the nation will build a lasting military-oriented education system. So now, all of our land doctrines will actually be 5% cheaper, which is very, very powerful. Okay, so all 24 of these units are, don't get me wrong, they are getting their planning preparation, and actually they're already done. But obviously they don't have the 80% or the 30% more planning preparation. Other than that, the games of the 11th Olympiad have been concluded. The 11th Olympic Games were recently held in Berlin, Germany. 49 different nations across the world. The 1936 Summer Olympics are the first in history to have enjoyed limited live television coverage. I'm not going to read all of this, but very exciting how obviously the game has quite a bit of flavor. I am a little concerned about the USSR, though. Currently, they are trying to fight off a civil war, or at least a civil war is churning. If they plan it correctly and they go through the Great Purge, which is obviously the Soviet Union focus tree and not mine, they will effectively fight off the Trotskyism civil war. you know, they just believe that Stalin, a lot of the military advisors believe that Stalin isn't necessarily bringing, you know, the USSR to, you know, the communistic means, or they, you know, essentially, essentially what's happening is there is a civil war that's forming, and to make a long story short, if they go through a certain idea, they can try to curtail the effects of the Civil War altogether. Other than that, we finally have 150 political power, so therefore we are going to improve. I would like to improve our economy, but unfortunately we can't have a war economy just yet. So therefore, we are going to hover over and purchase a war industrialist who is a political advisor, making all of our future military factories construct 10% faster. So like I said, we are going to be planning a war very, very soon. We are going to be going to war very soon. So I need to be prepared. I need to have weapons. I need to have equipment. Right now, we're building up support equipment, which is going to be used on our mountaineers, and we lack steel, which is very saddening. And I don't necessarily want to trade for supplies just yet. Student movement has been unlocked, and therefore here is our extra research slot. We're going to gain 20% more you know, research capabilities, and that is going to be very, very powerful. I think what I'm going to do is I will use that research slot to try to get better equipment, such as, you know, better engineering companies, better recon companies, and therefore making our you know, our infantry more powerful. Grand Battle Plan has been unlocked, giving us a 30% additional bonus to planning and preparation. We are now going to go for a prepared defense. More extensive systems of field fortifications greatly improve a unit's defense. They now get 10% more defense and some additional health, so organization is going to be very powerful. Like I said, these are all new tactics and flat stats and flat statistics and bonuses, so we don't really need to construct anything, which is powerful. We have run out of aluminum. -6, -7, -8. Let's go to trade. Get some aluminum. We are going to trade from the German Reich, at least for now. Actually, do they have oil? Probably not. I would like to get some oil from the German Reich, but they only have 1 unit of oil, which is very, very sad. Other than that, Mexico is giving us 16 oil, which is obviously what we ordered. So therefore, basically, we are paying for those oil, but instead of paying the United States, we are paying the Mexican government. So essentially, all we're doing is giving them 2 civilian factories, which actually, with a very weak country, could drastically improve their economy in the early game. We are now on the 30th of November and continuing to rise. We are finally constructing our civilian equipment. We have enough aluminum. Actually, I don't even know if we need interwar fighters. Concentrated industry and mechanical computing have both been unlocked. It is not 1937, but it is very close to it. I think our next priority is to basically continue on with our industry. Now, because I don't want this ahead of time penalty, all of this is 1937, I actually have the capability to store up to 30 days of technology. So basically what's going to happen is if I wait until the 1st of January, there will not be a penalty. And, you know, because I can store it, this, you know, it's very powerful. So it makes sense to wait. Anti-Comintern Pact. Germany proposes that we sign a pact recognizing that the aim of the Communist International, known as the Comintern, is to disintegrate and subdue existing states by all the means at its command, convinced that the toleration of interference by the Communist International in the internal affairs of the nations not only endanger their eternal peace and social well-being, but is also a menace to the peace of the world, desirous of cooperating in the defense against communist subversive activities. So Germany absolutely hates the USSR, and don't get me wrong, we are very scared of the USSR as well. They are very powerful. They could easily annihilate us. So it would make sense to secure an alliance with the German Reich. Unfortunately, the Soviet Union won't like me, but I don't necessarily mind. Other than that, it is the 17th of January. Let us continue on. We have the ability to get a new national focus. Let us get the Chinese border incident. Now, basically what this means is we are preparing for a war with China. The Chinese still refuse to acknowledge our liberation of Manchuria, and tensions along the border near Beijing have resulted in several skirmishes. If we manufacture an incident, we can escalate the conflict into full-scale war. This will give us the excuse we need to deal with the Chinese once and for all. World tension will go up by 1%, but this needs to happen. We have those 2 research slots. It is not... We don't want to do anything until the 1st. The Spanish Civil War has begun, which I will look at in just a moment. Waiting until the 1st. And there we are. All of the penalties have gone away. We will get better construction, better concentrated industry, and better improved machine tools. So basically we get better, more production out of our factories. All of our factories have more output now. And of course, we now build all of our factories a little bit quicker. Because we are moving into very close to July of 1937, I do want to continue on and unlock weapons and equipment sometime soon. I'm a little nervous, but I believe after we unlock Mountaineers, it would probably be in our best interest to get that started as quickly as possible. Now, obviously, 22 days until our Mountaineers are finally unlocked, and then we can start recruiting them. Spain has found itself in the middle of a civil war. There are 2 governments, one is fascist and one is communist. So, obviously, we want nationalist Spain to win against Republican Spain. 90% of the time, I've always seen nationalist Spain win, but sometimes Republican Spain can win, which obviously would be good for the USSR and potentially the, the Democrats, or better yet, the Allies. But we obviously want to gain a new ally in Europe, who, of course, is fascist. I'm not going to necessarily send over any volunteers. It doesn't necessarily seem like I don't really want to waste equipment, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Are the Marines prepped and ready to go? Yes, they are. And they should all be moved on over to garrison duty. And then eventually, I guess we can begin our naval invasion now. All we're doing is preparing. I definitely want to take over this province as quickly as possible, and the reason why I want to do that compared to any other province is if we look at these naval bases, this one's level 3, this one's level 1, this one is level 3. Now, this province, this naval base, is actually level 6. So that means if we could take over this naval base, we can easily funnel in a lot of supplies and equipment all into our military. And, that would mean we don't necessarily take attrition, and we would do very, very well. Other than that, all 16 units, we still don't have our Mountaineers. 9 more days. No divisions in basic training. That will change very soon. 150 political power. As much as I would really like industrial concern, I think we don't have 15% world tension, so I can't change the economy law. We are going to unlock a military theorist. Now, why do we need this? We are going to be accumulating army experience over time, which we can use. And of course, we can get land doctrine research times. Now, like I said, land doctrines are very expensive, and I would like as much of a reduction as possible. All of those, these land doctrine researches are flat stats and bonuses, and don't require any additional equipment or manufacturing. Only just research and time. Okay, Mountaineer infantry has been unlocked. Let us go ahead, finally begin unlocking new weapons and equipment. And we are going to go ahead and purchase 24 divisions of Mountaineers. We definitely don't have the equipment, and we do want to top these guys off with 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is way too many. And we don't have any army experience to make these units better. What do we lack? I guess we'll find out in just a moment. All 16 of these units need to be moved to Mountaineers. And I am going to change this color to green just because I like it to be green. And we are going to end this episode here. Thank you all so much for joining me. It really does mean a lot. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in our next adventure.